Hey, this is Chris Holmes back with Fully Engaged to give you resources and tips that you can hopefully use to help increase your student achievement level. So, what are we talking about today? Today, I'm going to talk about student engagement. One of the most critical aspects of education that sometimes we miss, but it's very important that we address this issue with your students to help them master content, to get involved in the curriculum, and to increase their academic outcomes. So, what is student engagement? Student engagement is the idea that students are excited, motivated, and committed to being a learner and are engaging with you in that learning process. So imagine this. Teacher is in the classroom. She could be in the front at the board working, or she could be using a PowerPoint to instruct. But either way, she's burning it up, smoking. I mean, she is doing her or he is doing his thing. The PowerPoint has bells and whistles and sounds and embedded videos and transitions and all. They've done it all. They've done it all. And the kids are in the room, they're sitting up straight and they're staring at that board with a glazed over look. For some reason, they are disconnected. They are disengaged. When kids are disengaged, the learning goes down or it plateaus. But there for some reason is no processing or accessing of that information. They're not getting it. They're not interested somehow. And so we want them to be interested in what we're teaching so that we can deepen their understanding of it and then do new things with the content, right? So we don't want glazed over looks. We want teachers who are teaching hard to also have learners that are learning just as hard. And that can only happen if they are engaged, right? So we're going to talk about strategies that help to increase student engagement. I'm going to give you roughly 5 to 7. I want to give you too many because I don't want to keep this video very long. And then if we need more information on those strategies, I will drop them in the link or in the bottom with links to them, or I would just do a separate video to maybe deepen our understanding of these things that I'm going to talk about today. So student engagement, there are three components of a student being fully engaged, no pun intended. Fully engaged, okay? One, behavioral engagement, which means they act out in ways that support learning. They act out in ways that support learning, which means there has to be rituals, routines, and processes in place by you or by your building that makes transparency very, very clear about how students are to act when learning is occurring or when learning is going on. Okay, so we want them to be behaviorally engaged. Number two, we want them to be emotionally engaged. Well, what does that mean? Emotionally engaged means I, as a being, as a person, feel involved as a participant in the learning community. I feel as if I belong and that you also value me as a learner. Okay? So there is this idea that I will talk about later in a whole other video because I think it's critically important, and that is culturally responsive instruction. I'm sure you've heard of it before. You may not know as much about it, but it is an instruction that really dives into connecting with students individually based on who they are and their experiences. Okay? So we'll talk about that later, but behavioral engagement, emotional engagement, and then you have this intellectual cognitive engagement, which means there is something happening up here that's firing off signals. That means learning is taking place. And we're not going to go as deep as talk about like brain science, okay? But there is something happening intellectually. A cognitive process is happening inside of them, which means they're listening, and as they listen, something's happening with their information in their brain, and that's cognitive engagement, okay? Three things: behavioral engagement, emotional engagement, and cognitive engagement. That makes them what I call fully engaged, okay? So let's get into strategies. The first strategy is the use of technology. I don't need to go on. The use of technology. It is what our kids do. It is who they are. They use technology on a daily basis, even to communicate. This one-on-one talking that we're used to doing, They don't do that as much, not even on the phone. They don't even use the phone to talk to somebody. They use the phone to communicate, but not so much talking. Okay, so let's use what they use to help engage them. It's going to make them feel more comfortable. Who's going to be uncomfortable? Likely us. It's not what we're used to doing. It's not how we grew up. It's not what we're familiar with. So we have to work on being uncomfortable and doing what's best for our students. So number one, strategy. Use technology, people. Stop fighting it. It's not going away ever. It's only going to get deeper and more broad. So you better jump on the bandwagon now, or your job is going to be super, super hard because you won't be able to connect with your students. Number two, I kind of talked about a little bit with behavior, but have some classroom management strategies already set in place so kids understand how to behave as the learning is going on. Some people call them classroom management. I call them more instructional management because it's really how you manage your instruction that facilitates this learning, okay? But it needs to be clear, it needs to be very bold, it needs to be transparent to your students, but also it needs to include them. So you can maybe set up some rules or put some processes in place that they have provided input for, and they feel like they have been a part of the process and created the atmosphere and the culture in that room. All right. Number three, let's talk about active learning. So sitting still for a whole lesson can be a whole lot for kids. Whether it's 30 minutes, 40 minutes, we try to say many lessons are 15 to 20 minutes. But sometimes even 15 to 20 minutes, if it's very, very complex, packed information, is a long time to sit. So students need to be active learners that gets them engaged in a lesson in different ways versus just sitting and getting. What are they actually doing? How can they be engaged with this information in a different way versus it coming directly from you? Sometimes that could be having kids play devil's advocate. They could be doing an interview process. That could be a short talk and pause, and then the kids will reproduce the information for you in their own verbiage or through their own experiences or by providing examples. But you want them to be actively engaged in the learning versus receivers of the information. Okay? Active learning, we can talk about that more. There's a lot of active learning strategies that we could talk about, but try in your best to have them actively engaged, actively doing something with the learning. Next, blended learning. Blended learning is this mix of your traditional classroom instruction, more on the stage, PowerPoint, video, something like that, and this online resource. Fusing those two together in a seamless way. It's not like, oh, today we're using computers. Oh, I'm excited. No, we use computers all the time. It's nothing new. Using a computer should not be an event. It's what we do in education. So blending the mix of this direct face-to-face instruction and online resources that allow you to facilitate the learning. Stepping back, really connecting with your students in a different way, with their questioning and looking at what they're producing or the way they're understanding the content through the use of an online resource is very helpful. Okay? Don't make it a big deal. It's just part of what we do all the time. But blended learning helps to engage your students in a different way. And it also allows you to assess in a different way in that informal capacity, which we need to do more of. More of informal assessments and then providing feedback right on the spot. Quick writes. I know if you're not an ELA teacher, especially my math and science people, our students don't write as much. I've even seen in science we've gotten away from even the lab reports. So our kids aren't writing. So we're not really reading how they're thinking. So the idea for a strategy to help them be engaged and not be unmotivated by writing is what we call as a quick write. A quick write is simply what it is a short journaling, a short description of to compare or to really help students get out their understanding. And then you get to know them better. You get to understand them a little bit better and where they are in this journey of learning. So using quick writes, You can use these as openings. You can use these as closings, or you can use these even during your guided instruction. Okay? But a quick write is very helpful. And then it gives you time to read, give them feedback, and then you can help move on and determine what your next steps are. Reciprocal teaching. Reciprocal teaching are for your students who really don't enjoy reading as much. And we know that every student is not a lover of reading, but reciprocal teaching can increase reading comprehension and get students excited about how they participate in this language arts component. It's really great for your ELL students, your EIP students, but really it works for all students. All students, this could happen. But it involves 4 key components. Predicting, which is they're going to talk about what's going on in the text. Questioning the text, or begin to asking questions of the who, what, when, where, how, and why. Clarifying the text and identifying those concepts that may be unfamiliar to them or words that are unknown. And then summarizing. So once again, this is a part of that active learner strategy because they're doing it. There's this text, and then they are actively engaged with the text, and then they are predicting, questioning, clarifying, and then summarizing to you. So this is perfect, and it's not on you; it's all on them. And you're sitting back, being able to facilitate. That's what we want you to be doing. And principals, leaders, that's what you want to see. Don't let your teachers wear themselves out. Kids need more responsibility. Trust me, they can take on more. Classroom participation strategies. Just find ways to get them to participate. The base level is questioning. Asking students questions, and make sure you're asking everyone questions, not just the kid that's going to always answer. Okay? Everybody needs to be asked questions and have an opportunity to answer, so that includes using wait time, and then make sure you ask students questions that you know they can answer. If you begin to ask very complex questions and you know just based on your observations and feedback they may not be able to answer that question, don't ask that to that particular kid. You want them to experience success. So find ways to get them to participate, and that includes asking questions and other strategies that I can talk about later. But participation is key for engagement. Let's see. Let's talk about personalized learning. Personalized learning is simply this. You want to create learning activities for students based on their learning gaps, their learning needs, or their learning interest. Gaps, needs, interest. They're going to be engaged in an activity that suits their needs, suits their interests, or that helps to fill in learning gaps that they currently have. So an online tool is a perfect way for personalized learning, but you can also do it through choice boards or things of that nature. But you want it to be valuable to them, and they know that it's something that they need. Okay? So personalized learning is easy in its idea, but it can be hard in its implementation because it does involve some planning, and it does involve you having a clear understanding of where all of your students are and where they need to go. Okay, so building those relationships is important. That culturally responsive instruction that I will talk about later is also important to help implement personalized learning strategies. And then besides personalized learning, then you have cooperative learning. Let them work together. Let them work in groups. Whether this is groups based off flexibility, differentiated groups, or these are skill-based groups based on data. There are many ways to do it, but students working together is a great strategy to help increase student engagement. I think I'm going to stop there. There are other strategies I can go into, but I want to keep the video short. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you found some of this information helpful to you as a teacher, as a leader, as a parent, or just somebody who is fully engaged and committed to the idea of public education. Until next time, be safe, be blessed. Catch me on Thursdays, 9 o'clock, Teacher Talks. I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.